Doug, imagine that they actually were to pass something like this and allow, people to just write off their student loans. How many people in the future do you think would ever repay their loans? I think the number's probably close to zero. And the people who are suckers are people like my wife and people like you who did pay back their student loans. But the other problem here is, universities and colleges, tuition has gone up by 2 to 3 times the inflation rate. What they're charging at most universities today across the country is a financial scam.
Paying for college is one of the biggest financial stresses on families today. The National Center for Education Statistics reported that from 1980 to 2019, college costs increased 169%, while earnings for workers increased only 19%. The solution for many students? Take out a loan. The numbers are staggering. 43 million borrowers have student debt in the U.S. today. The average loan debt is over $37,000.
Student debt makes me feel depressed, ashamed, disappointed, cheated. These are just a few of the emotions that student loan borrowers experience on a daily basis. This word cloud was provided to me by the thousands of stories that my organization, studentdebtcrisis.org, has received over the years.
For new generations entering the workforce, such debt also means putting off car, home, and other big-ticket purchases. Adding to their financial pain, too many expensive degrees outside the STEM fields serve little practical purpose in the modern workplace. Now, with a COVID-imposed moratorium on student debt payment set to expire on August 31st, the White House is said to be considering executive action to cancel some student debt.
Is the president taking executive action to cancel some level of student debt still on the table? And when is that gonna?
Yes, still on the table, still on the table.
But such plans spark outrage from many on the right.
Nearly 60% of Americans do not hold college degrees, but despite their lack of education, they will be on the hook for free college for all the fancy lads on the liberal arts express. So people who will ultimately be richer than you are stealing your money to pay for their bad choices. Got it.
That may be a bit of an overstatement. In the face of Republican opposition to legislation to cancel student debt, the president is said to be considering executive action to cancel up to $10,000 per student loan debt. But the plans are deliberately vague thus far. It is unclear whether such executive action is legal. And in the face of his dwindling poll numbers, while it might appeal to the young, educated demographic whom Biden still retains favor with, it would alienate others, as well as contribute to inflationary pressures caused by already profligate federal spending. And joining us now with more on the student loan debt crisis is Heritage Foundation economist Stephen Moore. Stephen, great to see you.
Doug, great to see you too.
First question, is it possible for Joe Biden to cancel some degree of student debt through executive action?
Well, I'm not a constitutional scholar, so that's a tough one. But I do know that it's a really bad idea, Doug. And, you're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 trillion of debt that essentially, when they talk about loan forgiveness, it's important for people to understand what they're meaning by that is the people who took out the loans won't repay them. And that means you and I and all the people listening and watching to this show will pay it. In other words, taxpayers get stuck with $1.5 trillion tab. By the way, we're running $30 trillion debt and $2 trillion in deficits. So it's not like we got a lot of money lying around to pay off this student debt. But also, when you think about it, that $1.5 trillion people took out the loans and people are not paying back those loans. Now, there were millions of Americans, who did repay their student loans. And that's the stand-up thing to do, the honorable thing to do. You take out a loan, you repay it. And now the people like my wife who repaid her student loan is steaming mad because now she has to pay higher taxes for people who didn't pay back their loans. That's not fair.
Well, yeah, I got a little bit of resentment in me myself. I put 4 kids through college, and I said, why couldn't I have been born 40 years later than that, I totally get that.
Doug, imagine that they actually were to pass something like this and allow, people to just write off their student loans. How many people in the future do you think would ever repay their loans? I think the number's probably close to zero. And the people who are suckers are people like my wife and people like you who did pay back their student loans. But the other problem here is, universities and colleges, the tuition has gone up by 2 to 3 times the inflation rate. What they're charging at most universities today across the country is a financial scam. And the solution to this problem, in my opinion, is number one, if the students aren't going to pay back their loans, then these universities that built these people should reach into their massive endowments and use that money to repay some of these loans. And I just don't understand. All you're going to do is reward universities to continue to escalate their student, tuition rates, which in some colleges now, Doug, are as high as $70,000 a year.
Well, you make a great point because I think the liberal arts degrees used to be worthwhile in the sense that you were studying the canons of Western civilization. I was an English major, and I know that somebody once said if you're an English major, at the very least, you can at least BS your way through life, and that's what I've pretty much done. But nowadays, a liberal arts degree is, feminist underwater basket weaving, and you go into the workplace, your employer says, well, that's really not going to help you in this job.
But it's so funny you should mention that. I was talking to a leading CEO of a major Fortune 500 company a few weeks ago, and he said, look, we'll hire just about anybody a sociology degree, So you're right. Look, I'm in favor of liberal arts education as well. I had one. But also, we need young people who are actually skilled and trained to do work. I'm a big fan of junior colleges, technical colleges. People give people real skills. If you're a carpenter or an electrician, if you're a nurse, if you're a welder, you can make $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year in this economy. So that's where the jobs are right now. And again, I don't have a problem with somebody getting a psychology degree, but they should know that there aren't a whole lot of jobs out there right now for psychologists.
Right. One of the guys who really brings home this point is Mike Rowe, who's now a new employee of TBN here, where he's really championing the blue-collar jobs because really they're no longer blue-collar. They're higher-paying jobs, really well-paying jobs. They're steady jobs because there's a constant need of that kind of employment, and you don't have college debt.
Well, that's right. And so I'm with you on that. And by the way, there are also highly skilled jobs. These are highly proficient, excellent skills that these folks have. And they're making a lot of money, especially with the overtime that you can make. Even truckers now can make $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year. So we need people who know how to do things, not just people who can think great thoughts. And but back to this issue of the student loan idea, why is it that somebody who graduated from college, who may actually end up making more money in their lifetime than someone who's working as, say, a waitress, why should that waitress who's working 40 hours a week and overtime have to pay more taxes for the person who went to an elite Ivy League college? It doesn't even make any sense from the standpoint of justice.
Another point we haven't yet gotten to is the fact that this government is spending money like it's going out of style. It's one of the reasons we're seeing this runaway inflation right now. What would resolving this sort of student debt problem do to spur inflationary pressures, if anything?
Oh, I guarantee you, because this has been the pattern, Doug, for the last 30 years. Every time we give the universities more loans, more scholarship money, more aid to the universities, what do you think they do? I think you know the answer. They just turn around and raise their tuition prices. So it's like a dog chasing its tail. We have not made, with all these federal billions and tens and hundreds of billions of dollars we've put into the university systems, we have not made college more affordable. We've made it less affordable. When I went to the University of Illinois, and I graduated in 1982, so that was some 40 years ago, my tuition was $1,000 a semester. Now, University of Illinois charged $12,000 a semester. The inflation rate hasn't gone up by 1,200%.
Right. Last question for you, Stephen. Is there a moral hazard in this? You've kind of referenced this a little bit, but I want to delve into it a little bit more. If you forgive college debts, what's next? Your car loan? Forgive the car loan? Forgive the mortgage?
That's a really great point. As I said earlier, people who act honorably, do repay their loans. There's some occasions, some people may not be able to pay those, but a lot of the people who aren't paying these loans have high incomes. For goodness sakes, Doug, why should you and I and the people watching this show have to pay their student loans when many of them are making six-figure salaries? They just feel like they're not honor bound to repay that money. We used to call people like that deadbeats, right? And the idea that somehow they are entitled to not paying their loans back. You're right. Who's ever going to pay a loan back if the government, Uncle Sam, keeps bailing people out?
Stephen Moore from the Heritage Foundation. Stephen, really appreciate your insights and your expertise. Good to see you.